The light has been locked in an eternal struggle with the void since the beginning of our universe, and that war is about to land on Azeroth. It began with an ocean of light that, like the Naru, deteriorated into pockets of void. These empty pockets grew and expanded until they had the power to strike back against the light. This is what Chronicle calls the clash of light and void, the very beginning of the cosmos. The beginning also of a great cycle that would only end with one wiping the other from the face of reality. The void then embodies possibility. It sees all paths. It knows what tiny pushes and nudges will tilt probability in its favor. The light, however, is opposite. It sees only one path, the one that leads to total domination. Now, or perhaps more realistically in 1 to 2 expansions, they will both be turning their hungry gaze on the ultimate prize, Azeroth. Wholly unaware of what they should really pay attention to, today's sponsor.
NordVPN.com/Bellular Gaming is where you will get 2 years for only £2.59 a month and 4 months for free. Of course, backed by their 30-day money-back guarantee. Just click that link down below. Now, NordVPN gives you freedom and security. It lets you browse the web, well, as if you're anywhere, and also enhances your security a lot. As an example, a lot of content is actually region-locked, including a bunch of really useful US sites that I even use for work. So Nord saves me there. You've got streaming services, which are a killer use case for a tool like Nord. Just about every region has a different library on whatever streaming services you're using. So Nord basically unlocks a lot of value from things that you've already got. But of course, there's also the security side, right? Because your data is like encrypted with Nord. It is a lot more secure than not using a VPN. Helps you with things like, man-in-the-middle attacks, like people making a fake network to pwn you, stuff like that. And they've also got great things like their dark web monitor. It's really nice. You add your email to it, and if your email address, like your login credentials, appear in a data breach, it will let you know, which is brilliant because then you know to change your passwords. Really, security is only getting more and more important as time goes on, and that is why I use Nord. Of course, the app and browser extension are super easy to use, so head up nordvpn.com/Bellular Gaming for an amazing price on 2 years with 4 months for free, backed by their 30-day money-back guarantee.
Okay, being serious with you, there are numerous hints in the game right now that have been added within this expansion that are essentially making all of this seem more likely and more timely. So, with that said, let's get going. And on one side will be Azshara, the would-be Queen of Azeroth, seemingly backed by the full might of the Void. Even under N'Zoth, she was always queen, and she had schemes of her own. Now, according to some fresh lore, she has claimed the true throne of power that she sought, and so she will return from beyond the veil to reclaim what she feels is rightfully hers, which is rule over all. On the other side is Yrel, backed by the Lightbound army and the Light Mother. They showed us how brutally dogmatic the Light can be recently. You either serve or you die. Yrel is now the High Exarch and has fought a crusade on Draenor to convert all natives to the light, including alternate universe Garrosh. That crusade is only one dark portal launch sequence away from being unleashed upon us. So their armies gather, and soon the battle lines will be drawn. In the clash of light and void, we will have to choose a side. And that is where things actually get quite interesting. Legions of the Light and the shambling hordes of the Void are going to clash on Azeroth, but it very much seems to be gearing up as a 1-2 punch, likely with Void making it to the scene first. Today, we're not deconstructing Void whispers or any of that. That's fun. We basically know it's going to be soon, and it can be left at that. This expansion is doing some heavy lifting, trying to set up future content, even including the back of Azeroth. But not so subtly throughout the Isles, we are seeing signs that the Void wasn't defeated with N'Zoth. His death may even have... well, it may have been part of the plan. It may have just been a minor setback, or of course an acceptable loss. You gotta remember, our recent jaunt back in time allowed us to be seen by him, meaning he knew he was in the timeline where we would kill him. Therefore, I'm quite sure that his defeat in Ny'alotha was worked into the plan. And tied up with this will be Azshara, arguably the strongest mage in Azeroth's history, and that is before she found whatever she wanted. Now, her allegiances have always been the same. She's the queen. Sometimes she will bend the knee, but never in her heart. With both Sargeras and N'Zoth, she only had her own victory in mind. When we freed her in Ny'alotha, she left through a portal, and she said she was tired of dealing with harbingers. Of course, in this case, the old gods are the harbingers of the Void Lords. Therefore, she is going to find the Void Lords, the real boss. Now, to defeat, to ally with, to seek power from, we cannot know. But based on what we have covered in this previous video, you can assume that Xerath Umbra is likely, and per the messages of her followers, she actually seems to have found what she wanted, saving us a trip on Danuzer's wild ride to the Void Lands, whatever it may be called, because this time, Azshara did it for us, and she will come to us with whatever she's found, helpfully keeping the plotline focused on Azeroth and the things we care about, not the esoteric, bizarre background stuff that, quite clearly, most people don't care about. So maybe she is working under the Void Lords for now, like she did with Sargeras and N'Zoth before, but she will ultimately serve herself and, of course, the people she wishes to rule. Now, you might worry hearing Xerath Umbra, right? These Shadowlands comparisons may appear in your head, but don't worry, this is going to play out a lot differently. I'm almost completely sure. As for the why, Steve Danuser recently confirmed that Old Gods and the Void Lords, and I would say that the Void Lords are the people who Azshara has went to, therefore she was to either steal their power or champion them. It will be them, right? We've since found out that the Void Lords and the Old Gods may not always see eye to eye. This could get a bit complicated in the lore, but I think in a decently dramatic way that will have her really usurping the old harbingers, right? She can go and be the real deal for the Void Lords, where evidently the old gods haven't always been particularly successful. Now, first up, whenever we time traveled back to the Black Empire in Thaldraszus, N'Zoth recognized us. Our appearance confirmed which timeline he was on, right? Of all the different timeways that he could see, because he saw us, we were able to narrow down the possible futures. And that's the thing. Void's big power is that it can see many, many, many futures. But of course, that's only so useful. You need to know what's actually going to come. So basically, we kind of spoiled all of Warcraft for N'Zoth. He pretty much knew that we would kill him. But nothing's changed, right? I mean, usually if a time traveler changes things in the past, well, what happens? Is it that thing where you have multiple timeways? Do we go with many worlds? Do they come back and everything's bizarre and weird and different? Well, since our time shenanigans didn't really change anything, that pretty much means that we are operating on the you already changed the past principle, which is one of the many templates of time travel stories in media. And that pretty much confirms that we can assume that the N'Zoth that we met in Ny'alotha knew for thousands of years who would kill him, or at least that was definitely within the realms of possibility. Now, if you're the smartest old god around, there's no doubt that if you know this is something that could very much happen to you, that you're going to have some sort of contingency plan. So then, Azshara, I have to wonder, what if Azshara is part of his contingency? You have to wonder about Xal'atath and the dagger. Backup, not a 500 IQ master plan where everything is planned to the precise detail, but more that he's put in a metric ton of backups in case things don't go quite right. Maybe he even has contingencies against his own masters. like another old god. Because in patch 10.0.7, we actually learned that there is still a fifth old god, or at the very least, the book the Deathwing was writing in the margins of mentioned 5, not the 4 that we know. We're of course also starting to hear about a mysterious land that is beyond the veiled and forbidden seas, essentially the back of Azeroth. The only people who we know that have been there are pirates, and they've told us about the vast wealth that they found. Then we see shipwrecks throughout the Isles that are laden with wealth, and this familiar eye buried along with it. What if this eye nested in a bunch of treasure? Well, where does it come from? I suppose that's the question. And what if it comes from somewhere beyond the Veiled Sea, east of east, west of west? In patch 10.1, a lot of this gets more foreboding. With N'Zoth's death, we thought that the corruption overall would be gone, but our Black Dragon brothers, they find that the Whispers are very much still there. The Whispers could be from our fifth and final old god, and perhaps this one won't see eye to eye with the Void Lords and their plans for Azeroth. And even without dealing with the Black Dragons in this modern story, whenever N'Zoth was defeated, Illyria didn't have the voices stop. We see in her dialogue afterward that indeed new voices joined the chorus. So that more is happening is a clear fact within the game's canon. Now, of course, this is not to say that suddenly the Void is good and that maybe this fifth old god will disagree with the other ones. No, we have seen their plans unfold before. The Ethereals had a Void Lord manifest on their homeworld of Koresh, and look how that went. So, here's where we're at. Azshara will return, she may be a solo operator, she may work for the Void Lords, but it's always really going to be for her. Xal'atath, now having spent years in the flesh, will likely return also. There are then the Ethereals, especially the Void ones. They are, well, in the background in many ways, but actually they are quite in the foreground now, because Shadreen has been gathering intel on us, and left a shadow-scrawled coin in our adventure journal as thanks, and she did this at the very start of the Dragonflight expansion. Check out this video if you want to learn more about the growing ethereal mystery over the last 4 or 5 years. And the old gods seem to have enjoyed building an empire and nurturing Azeroth's flesh, as they put it. So helping a Void Lord to destroy it, it does seem counterproductive, especially when they want to claim whatever power is at the heart of the planet. What this all amounts to, then, is a hard confirmation that the Void threat is coming soon, and given that they really want Azeroth, I have to imagine they will come to us. And to be honest with you, I think this might even be the next expansion. I mean, Azshara is being teased, the Ethereals are stalking us, right? There's likely another old god in the mix. There's lots of old god foreshadowing within the Dragon Isles if you look hard enough in the right places. And then, as the cherry on top, we have reason to believe that if Void is coming back, that the light will be hot on its heels. In the audiobook, 1,000 Years of War, Illyria was given a vision. She saw the light moving through the cosmos like a ravenous predator. It touched the minds of Azeroth's mortals and corrupted them forever. Generations lived and died in invisible chains, a lifetime of obedience for fleeting moments of peace. She saw worlds touched by holy fire. She saw war and the light striking back against Void. The Void strikes first, and it will for us, and the light will retaliate, because it wants Azeroth too, of course. But what the game has not shown us yet is that the light is just as messy as the Void. Its greatest believers are, in some cases, even doubting its intentions. As an example, Velen actually doesn't want the light to win the war, like you may think he would. He actually wants to stop it. We heard from an interview that Velen was quite deeply affected by watching Xera And right now, that's literally his motivation on the World of Warcraft website. And of course his doubts are correct. He saw Xera's brutal, unwilling conversion firsthand. And obviously, watching his son's corruption and death proved to him that rather than follow the light, he has to make things right himself. He can't just follow the light's path, he has to follow his path. And that really is the new Velen, and it's why so much potential lies in his character. But with the history of the light on Azeroth, not everyone is going to feel that way. When the going gets rough, obviously expect the Scarlet, certain members of the Church of the Holy Light, and a whole legion of paladins and priests to want to pick the wrong side. Then there's Turalyon. In the past, he had perhaps a little bit been shown as a warhawk. I think slightly less so now, but ultimately you just have to think about his past. He's also obviously in charge of the Alliance military. That's after fighting a 1,000-year war on the light side. Can you imagine 1,000 years? If Yrel showed up with her army of the light and a bunch of Naru behind her and she demanded Azeroth kneel, surely a bit of him would want to join her. Go back to what he's used to. Actually, but also maybe not, because 1,000 years of fighting alongside the army of the light and seeing their methods didn't change his mind, but maybe his wife will. She was the first Void Elf, and Turalyon defended her throughout that transformation. So he may turn his back on Azeroth in a moment of blinding faith, but I think ultimately he will not turn on Illyria. We also know that the light has been infiltrated. Do you remember the character Lothraxion from Legion? Well, we thought that he was proof that not all demons were bad. Maybe we harbored a few suspicions, or thought it was just a fun design. It was also a bit of a warning that the light can completely transform something. The idea that this terrible demon could be turned into a good guy, but now it is actually so much more. A Nathrezim infiltration document said that the light loves nothing more than being proven right. So, basically, if they believe that they have converted a Nathrezim to their cause, they absolutely would trust him because in a way, it confirms what they want to think and what they deeply dogmatically believe. So yeah, the light in a way are a little bit dumb, and Lothraxion is a plant. His involvement may be the next time that we actually get to see Denathrius again, because of course, as we know, Denathrius is at large, one of the only characters I think that was nearly universally liked in the Shadowlands expansion. So, what first seems to be two big armies clashing, I think will more likely be kind of complicated. Likely a ton of smaller factions on each side in a big mixing pot. They have their own motives, they're duking it out, and they are trying to convince us of what side we should be on. At the end of the day, we will learn that, really, neither of them should win. And that kind of brings us back to this eternal conflict for the fate of the cosmos thing. Xera called it the Great Cycle, one that was supposed to be renewed with Illidan's birth. She called him the Child of Light and Shadow. One cycle, from the clash at the dawn of creation to the final fight for Azeroth's world soul. Of course, that's something that previously we had seen in the game lore. I believe in a short story from Velen's perspective that was in and around the time of Mists of Pandaria, this big final battle. And of course, in a way, you cannot mention Illidan without mentioning Azshara. They actually do have a link because essentially of them both being born with golden eyes, which is supposed to be, a signifier of a character of great importance to the future of things, a character with an important destiny. But of course for Illidan, he had his moment and he so proudly declared that he is in fact his scars. That might sound a little bit cringe out of context, but it is the perfect analogy for, well, how he would actually feel. It is how he feels, and also a little bit for us, right? The people of this world, the players, if you think about the overall story, they've been touched by and threatened by every single force and still remained independent. We are our battle scars, and we will have to remember that when Yrel and perhaps Azshara come knocking. because that day we are going to be launching into the most terrible war in Azeroth's history. And if you need any more proof, I think this is it. And this is something that went quite unnoticed during Legion. Here it is. The final Legion invasion of Azeroth was going down. This is before the Tomb of Sargeras, when things canonically are still looking like they could be quite bleak after both sides taking tremendous losses. Now, the Legion threatens the Eastern Kingdoms through Karazhan, and perhaps even Karazhan could open a second front in the war. Well, Medivh briefly appeared there. And it was a completely insane moment for the lore, because despite Medivh's entire existence, his entire life being tied to the threat of the Legion, and this being the ultimate climax of that story, he said that he had something more important to do. In the Great Dark, an even more terrible war was building, and he had to go and work out what was happening and how to sort it out. So what could be more terrible than the Legion's total desolation of the planet? Well, how about infinite armies clashing in ceaseless battle? In Revendreth, we first saw the light when it's angry. The Naaru scorched the realm. And that's the realm that is about redemption. And that seems like it's something that should be quite aligned with the Light's ideas. But of course they had been hit so hard that there are permanent scars that still burn violently, and they only stopped when they got what they wanted, which was the banishment of the Nathrezim, something that, you could potentially argue, kind of bit them back. Throughout Legion, we saw planets in the Great Dark made desolate by Void. On the world of Draenor, we saw the brutality of the Light's doctrine, right? Every sentient species submits or gets wiped out. That is what we learned from the Mag'har Orc allied race introduction quest. Hell, even earlier with some of the lore of Draenor, you learn a little bit of what can happen, the potential risks of the force of life going out of control. It's something you see plenty in that expansion and in Chronicle that they've been a little bit less hard on in the game recently. Over in Argus, we saw the unhinged Shadow Guard wildly sacrifice themselves for their Void Masters. So it's going to be a pretty damn crazy war, one that will ravage the world in ways that we've never seen before. It'll test loyalties and allegiances in a way that some of the game's characters have never had to deal with. I mean, with Illyrian Turalyon, obviously, there's the status of their son, which I think could be quite interesting. You have other characters like Salandria, another, in that case, a Blood Elf character that Blizzard had been setting up, right? That, I believe the Bronze Dragonflight seemed to indicate that she had something dark in her future, and obviously at the end of Legion in patch 9.2.5, they brought her back. Every fight has been a pretty simple one broadly, right? There's a bad guy, everyone agrees on the bad guy because they're bad, and we go in and kill them. I think this one will kind of change that up. Or at the very least, we'll be caught in quite a crazy crossfire. Just that this time, it's not about picking a side, it is about making a side. Really, Shadowlands is a cosmos divided will not stand, brought that idea to us in the worst way that didn't feel real, it didn't feel rich, it felt like another rug pull. But as Dragonflight is proving, it's more that a family divided can't stand either. So the ideas of unity are even being set up with the Drakthir and how the flights will carry on. It's going to be a pretty fascinating time. So when Azshara turns up at the head of an infinite swarm of void creatures and Yrel's crusade comes knocking, it's going to be up to us, the adventurers of Azeroth stuck in the middle, to bring the Eternal War to an end. But perhaps by bringing the cosmos' two most antagonistic forces onto the same side, our side. Think about how Xal'atath calls the Naaru long-lost brethren. I think it was either at the start of Legion or in the first patch of Legion that they added that voice line. And I think they quite clearly added it with some intent. So, be this the next expansion or the one after that, that is indeed what I think is coming. You're going to have Azshara, Xal'atath, Yrel, potentially even a bit of Illidan. I think it could be pretty damn crazy. Okay, let me know what you think anyway. What is your dream expansion? I mean, we all know that Void and Light is going to happen. Light's been teased consistently. Void has as well. And to be honest with you, at some point, World of Warcraft is going to have to give it a rest on the color purple. Accidentally mentioning an old book, but really, they have to give the purple a rest eventually. So I think that the next time the Void happens, much like with how we saw demons here or there for years, and then we had the big demonic blowout with Legion, I think for these two other big groups of enemies, we need the big blowout. Send them off with an absolute bang and launch us into whatever comes next. What do you think? Let me know. Check out this video next. I wish I could link like loads of videos here because there's a whole constellation of them that are directly tied to this video, but I'll pick whatever I think's best for this link. With that said, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.